New photos are now emerging. Confessed killer Chris Watts with his mistress, and they could share more light on their relationship. Watts is sentenced to life in prison after admitting he killed his pregnant wife and their 2 daughters, as well as his unborn son. Here's Watts with his girlfriend, Nicole Kessinger. The pictures were released in investigative documents by the Weld County District Attorney's Office. Watts' relationship with Kessinger lasted for about 2 months. They worked together at Anadarko Petroleum. Kessinger has told the Denver Post that she barely knew Watts, but the photos are telling a much different story. The documents also reveal that Kessinger searched for wedding dresses online for hours the night before the murders. Joining me now to talk about all of this, former head prosecutor Bob Bianchi. Bob, there is so much coming out in these investigative documents, and there's a couple storylines that are changing. First and foremost, Chris speaking with the media. Initially, he told his friend he didn't want to. Also, whether or not Watts had told his mistress about the child. He also at one point told her the child wasn't his. So what are you making of all the information that's just now coming out?
I got to be honest with you, I've been a little critical of one thing about this case, and that is when the prosecutor took it out of the death penalty and allowed him to plead to consecutive life without parole sentences. He never did another interview of the defendant. The prosecutor's explanation was that he wouldn't believe anything Christopher Watts would say. I find that to be extremely incurious for a prosecutor. If it were me, I would have said to him, you're going to come in if you want us to take it out of the death penalty. You're going to tell us chapter and verse, truthfully, every single thing that happened and the reasons why and the motives, because you kind of leave the family. If you listen to the sentencing proceeding, and I did the entire one, it was brutal to listen to this family say, we just don't know why. We don't know why. And it also opens the door now for Chris Watts and all these other people to opine for years and years to come about what their real motive and reason was. So it was a lost opportunity, but you're right.
But why would you do that? If the FBI said that, and especially in some of these documents, that his storyline was changing so much he wasn't making any sense.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
why would he tell the truth now?
Well, because he's got a motivation is not to get the death penalty. When the FBI was investigating him and he was having changing and conflicting stories, he was out in the media, asking, where are you? Please come home. Yeah, he's lying. That's not unusual for people to do prior to them being arrested. But when you're facing the death penalty, you now have a motivating factor to cooperate with prosecutors and give the real story. Now, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but you at least give it a roll. You give it a shot. You try.
I want to get your reaction on Nicole's role, the mistress. What do you make of it, especially after reviewing some of these documents? Because initially when we heard from her, she appeared really to be a victim, and they had a relationship.
Yeah, I don't want to cast aspersions here, but, I mean, we don't know. But we do know that the story is changing and evolving. We know that she had a relationship. We know that she expected that she was going to marry him. He was saying, according to her, that the wife was pregnant, 15 weeks pregnant at the time, by some other man, and then he changed the story, and she's changing her story. I mean, again, we go back to the incuriosity of the whole thing. I definitely want to know chapter and verse. Who's involved? Was there anyone else involved? And this happens time and time again. I don't mean to say that she was literally involved, but when they're changing the story like that, you got to go, why is that?
Yeah, and you look at some of her, like you said, her Google results, from the wedding dress to Amber Fry, who we remember was the mistress of Scott Peterson. There's a lot of Google searches that surprised us in some of those investigative documents. Bob Bianchi, thank you so much.
My pleasure.